part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome to the latest edition of the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. The producer for this show, as he has been for many, is Jordan Powell. Does a fantastic job, and I'm really appreciative of his skills. We come to you on Tuesday, the December 7th. Excuse me, Monday the 27th. I keep thinking I have my days all messed up. So anyway, we come to you on Monday, December 27th. And before we get started on the bad news, I want to extend everybody well wishes and Merry Christmas. Merry belated Christmas to everybody out there. I hope you had a great time with your loved ones and were able to enjoy yourselves. And, I had a wonderful gathering with family, and I've said this on my radio program on News Radio, WTM 1100 and 106.9 FM here in Cleveland many times, that my dad used to say to us as kids, all he wanted for Christmas was health for his family. That's it. He didn't worry about gifts at all. And when he did relent and finally tell us what he might want, we got him socks and coffee, or socks and a shaver or something like that, every single year, by the way. But it was all about health, make sure my family's healthy. He always put his family ahead of himself. And we as kids used to go, oh, whatever, Dad, what are you talking about, health, But the older you get, at least for me, and I know for a lot of people too, the more you realize that being able to be healthy for your family, or having a healthy family and then being healthy for your family, is the best gift you can possibly have. And we were fortunate as a family this year to be relatively healthy. I mean, everybody's got something, but very appreciative of the time that we got to spend over Christmas worshiping Jesus Christ, who died on the cross after he was born, of course, had to be born in order to die. And this was his birthday, and we celebrated it. And we're grateful for Jesus' sacrifice. Those of us who are Christians and believe that Jesus died for our sins so that we would have an opportunity to be with the triune God in glory. I don't take that for granted at all. And so it's a very important, extremely important day on the calendar for me. The second most, or right up there with Easter weekend. So definitely an enjoyable time, and I hope everybody out there had a good time as well, and continues to have a good time over the holiday season, which of course includes New Year's. Unfortunately, on the sports front, not good news because of what the Browns did on Christmas Day of all days. Christmas, late afternoon, early evening. Browns went to Green Bay, and they laid another egg. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. I know this wasn't a blowout, so you say, well, how could they lay an egg when they didn't get blown out? But the Browns got the Packers, I would say, D- game, and still lost. And that's what's problematic, among many things, to me, is that this game was available for the taking. The Browns easily could have won. I don't say should have won like some people do, but could have won, because the Packers decided to be in a giving mood on Christmas Day, especially in the fourth quarter, and reel the Browns back in and allow them to have a look at winning the game with nothing more than a field goal. Final score 24-22. Browns had the ball 1st and 10 at midfield, inside of 2 minutes to go. Everything's in front of them, and possession ends with an interception by Baker Mayfield, interception number 4. Yes, I understand on the fourth pick. Rasul Douglas either grabbed, you either call him for holding Donovan Peoples-Jones or pass interference. He got away with it, and he wound up getting the pick. Okay, well, you know what? That happens in the NFL every week. It's unfortunate to say the least. I will say this about that, and I don't make excuses for the Browns. I don't make excuses for the teams that I want to win, that I want to see win. A while ago, I advocated for the eye in the sky official as part of the officiating crew, an official part of the officiating crew in the press box in his own little room or her own little room with nothing but TV monitors and, a remote and essentially the ability to watch any play on replay. And then if he or she, the replay official in the booth as part of the officiating crew, sees anything dramatic in a game-altering play, that person buzzes down to the head referee and says, hey, well, I caught something that you guys didn't. We have to correct this. This was one of those cases, the Douglas hold/interference on Peoples-Jones, where I think that eye in the sky or eye in the press box official would have paid off, because that official would have seen the replay, seen that it was an egregious penalty, and buzzed down to the referee and said, hey, we got to make this change. But that's not in the books. That's not how the NFL rolls. And I also think it's not even a question for overrule on an eye in the sky in NFL headquarters, because it's an interpretive call. But I don't know. I would have thought that would have been a perfect spot for a replay official who's on site at the game to buzz down, but that's not the case with the NFL these days. They don't have that. But that's not an excuse. Absolutely not an excuse. The Browns lost. They deserved to lose. They did what mediocre teams do. They lost. Mediocre teams, mediocre to bad teams, and now the Browns are sub 500 at 7-8. Find ways to lose. And the Browns have been masters at finding ways to lose this year. 6 games, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, 6 games by 6 or fewer points. Week 1 at Kansas City, 33-29. Week 5 at LA Chargers, 47-42. Week 8, home to Pitt, 15-10. Week 12 at Baltimore, 16-10. Week 15, home to the Raiders, 16-14. And Christmas Day / early evening at Green Bay, 24-22. You give me just 2 of those 6, and you're looking at a completely different complexion to this season. Just win 2 out of those 6 where you had a realistic chance to win. And we're having a different discussion. But guess what? The Browns are 7-8 because they lose those games. It's in their DNA this year, at least, to lose these types of games. And you think about some of the wackadoodle stats pertaining to those 6 close losses, and it makes you scratch your head even more. Week 1 at Kansas City, they led 22-10, 29-20, had 457 total yards to Kansas City's 397, and lost 33-29. Week 5 against the Chargers, 25 first downs, 531 total yards, 0 turnovers, 42 points, and lost the game. I don't think there's been a case in NBA and NFL history where a team went 40-plus points 500-plus total yards, and 0 turnovers and lost the game. But the Browns did, 47-42 at the Chargers. Week 12, Baltimore. Browns intercepted Lamar Jackson 4 times. 4. And still lost. 16-10, as we mentioned. And then week 16 at Green Bay, Browns had 28 first downs as opposed to Green Bay's 19. Browns rushed for 219 yards, had 408 total yards as opposed to Green Bay's 311 in the same number of possessions, and still lost. You can't make this stuff up. This is in a cumulative, this is OIC, only in Cleveland. You know, Kenny wrote it. We keep talking about it. The Roadman on with Greg I in the Press Play Podcast Network, the fantastic podcast, the Reg I and Rhoda Show. Roadman, for my money, invented OIC. Somebody might claim they did, but I think Roadman was the guy. He coined the term. He made it popular. Only in Cleveland, you say, well, this stuff happens to other cities and other sports. Yeah, maybe, but not in the cumulative effect. Not an individual thing might happen. But when you add it up, when it's coming like a constant wave after wave after wave of stuff, that's OIC. And this is a kind of an OIC season. And it's also, if we're going to stick with the acronyms, it's an SOB season. Same old Browns. I didn't want to have to say this. I never thought I would have to say this after last year. Kevin Stefanski comes on the scene, restores order, changes the culture. Browns win 11 games in the regular season, 11-5, go to the playoffs, win a playoff game in Pittsburgh before losing to Kansas City in the divisional round. Everybody's, upset that they lost, but thrilled about the future. Here we go. The Browns have turned the page. No more talk about the same old Browns. This is different. New era. Well, you know what I've seen this year? I've seen the same old Browns. I've seen a team that figures out ways to lose. I've seen a team that is not well coached. And I'm talking about all elements of the coaching staff, not just the HC or the DC or the OC, the whole shebang. Not well coached, undisciplined, sloppy, stupid penalties, terrible special teams, suspect to poor quarterback play, all leading up to bad loss after bad loss after bad loss and a 7-8 record. Sorry, not sorry that this is same old Browns. And you know what? They have to prove it again that they're not the same old Browns, in my opinion. So you look at these types of losses and you look at the way they do it and you say, maybe this just isn't, they're not capable of winning anything noteworthy that's close. And I'm looking at these victories. They beat the Texans, who, despite pounding the Chargers yesterday in Houston, are a terrible team. Browns beat the Texans in Cleveland week 2, beat the Bears. That's nothing of note in week 3, even though the Bears went to Seattle and won. Seattle's a shell of itself. A quality victory, you would think, with Minnesota at Minnesota, week 4, 14-7, but Minnesota's back struggling again. They lost the game against the, Rams yesterday. Let me see what the Vikings are. Vikes are now 7-8. So I thought that the Vikings victory was going to end up being a quality victory because the Vikings were going to figure out a way to get, above 500 and get into the playoffs. But right now they're 7-8. So I don't know, but that's 3 victories accounted for. maybe call that a half of a quality victory with Minnesota. Denver, that's nothing. They won 17-14 at home on Thursday Night Football. At Cincinnati, definitely a quality victory. Home against Detroit, no. And then home against Baltimore, yeah, I suppose. I'll throw that in, even though Baltimore was watered down. So at most 2.5 quality wins. Home against Baltimore, at Cincinnati, and half of the Minnesota game on the road, 14-7. Which, when, by the way, the offense was putrid. The defense saved the Browns that day against Minnesota. But the point is, you're 15 games in, and you can only lay claim to 2.5 quality victories. That is really sad. And the fact of the matter is the Browns do not come back against good teams. They just don't. They don't perform well in the fourth quarter when the money is on the line. And who has been the leader in that department most of the time this year? Well, yeah, number 6, Baker Mayfield. We'll get into him on the other side of the upcoming break. But this team doesn't know how to close games. It doesn't know how to come back from not, ginormous deficits. I'm talking 1-score deficits in the fourth quarter, especially against quality teams. And that's why you have a 7-8 record if you're the Cleveland Browns. For all of the negativity that I have just espoused, and the fact that I'm going to, pile on after the break talking about how poorly Baker Mayfield has performed, it is amazing that the Cleveland Browns are still alive when it comes to a playoff opportunity. They actually have a relatively, uncluttered path. Let's put it that way. It's going to be extremely difficult, and I'm not holding my breath. I'm thinking that they're not going to get in because they're going to go to Pittsburgh and get pounded in what is most likely Ben Roethlisberger's final regular season game as a Steeler on Monday Night Football. So I think the Browns are going to get hammered, and we won't even be worried about the Browns potentially having to beat the Bengals in the final week to get in the playoffs. But as of this moment, this is what is necessary for Cleveland to win the AFC North. I have to laugh as I say it. It's mind-blowing. Browns need to win at Pittsburgh and win home against the Bengals to finish the season at 9-8. The Chiefs need to beat the Bengals, and then, of course, the Bengals would lose to the Browns to finish 9-8. And then the Rams or Steelers beat the Ravens, and the Ravens would finish 9-8. In that 3-team tiebreaker scenario, the Cleveland Browns would win the first tiebreaker, which is head-to-head against the other two. They had the better record head-to-head against the other two. The Browns in that scenario would be 3-1 against the Steelers and Bengals. The Bengals would be 2-2 against the Ravens and Browns, and the Ravens would be 1-3 against the Browns and Bengals. So, and the Steelers would be out of the money because the Browns would have beaten them, and the Steelers would, if they beat the Ravens after losing to Cleveland, would be 8-1. So yes, the Browns have a chance to win the AFC North and be a 4th seed in the AFC. But based on what I've seen all year, I'm not planning on it. I'm not counting on it. I think the Browns are going to do what they have done all year, and that is either find ways to lose or get trucked, because they have been trucked in 2 games. 2 of the losses, the other 2 out of the 8, because we talked about 6 by 6 or fewer. The other 2 out of the 8, Arizona came to Cleveland and boat raced them, and then Belichick in New England, the Patriots humiliated them 45-7. And that game there, that Patriots game, I was hoping was going to be a wake-up call to this organization. Let me find the week here. It was week 10, 45-7 at New England. The Browns had just throttled the Bengals in Cincinnati, 41-16. Went to Belichick and McDaniels, and they were humiliated. They were exposed on every level. Every level of that team was exposed. Offense, defense, special teams, schemes, quarterback. Belichick was, in my mind, he was almost trying to do the Browns a favor. It should have been viewed as a blessing in disguise. As terrible as the game was, as awful as it was, the Browns should have said, you know what? Bill Belichick laid bare all of our deficiencies. And he has shown us what we need to do and what we need to fix. And instead, I think the Browns just dug in and said, you know what? It was just a bad day. We're going to keep doing things the way we always do. And guess what? It's gotten you nothing but mediocrity since. I mean, when they lost to the Patriots, they fell to 5-5. Well, now they're 7-8. And I know you can't make necessarily sweeping changes inside of a season and expect to have instant results. But the fact that the Browns have basically done nothing different on offense, defense, and special teams since Belichick showed them their flaws is really indicting of this organization. It's really telling of this coaching staff and the players and everything else. So it's too bad that we're even talking about 7-8 when this is one of those years. If the Browns would have had their act together, they would have been cruising to a division title. And I know the other teams can say the same thing, but the Browns were the ones that had the ginormous expectations. They were the ones who were supposed to take the next step up and win a division. And instead, we're looking at a 7-8 team. A 7-8 team with hope, but still. Anybody who's watched the Browns, let's say I'll just give you the last two games. Anybody who's watched the Browns against the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday, December 20th, and the Packers in Green Bay on Christmas Day, December 25th, you're going to tell me they're going to go to Pittsburgh and beat them? Heck to the no. Now, even if they beat Pittsburgh, are they going to beat Cincinnati? You would think, yeah, they got a good chance, especially if they were coming off a win over Pittsburgh. But the Bengals looked great against the Ravens yesterday. I know the Browns like the matchup, and Baker Mayfield on one leg feels like he can beat the Bengals. But Cincinnati, with all that incentive and their firepower and their really good quarterback play, I still like Cincinnati's chances in the final week, even if Cleveland has gotten, the dominoes to fall properly until that point. I think Cincinnati can finish the Browns off. All right, when we return on the other side of the upcoming break, got to talk about the Bake Show. Baker Mayfield.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hey everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
Welcome back to the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I'm your host, Dennis Manoloff. We are alongside Jordan Powell, producer extraordinaire. Baker Mayfield stunk. Stink, stank, stunk. Speaking of the Christmas season, at least with Hollywood, the Grinch. Stink, stank, stunk against Green Bay. 21-36, 222. 2 TDs, 4 picks, 5 sacks. Total QBR on a scale of 1 to 100 of 35.3. Quite honestly, I think that's generous. I'm one of those people who looks at total QBR and really respects that as a way to assess a quarterback's performance. I think 35.3 is way high. I thought he was going to be sub 20. Just an awful performance by Mayfield. Even if I grant you the last pick was an unfortunate situation where Peoples-Jones got tugged on by Douglas, still a terrible job by Baker Mayfield. And he has really hurt the Cleveland Browns this year. And I know against Green Bay, he was coming back from, the illness, the COVID situation. So you'd expect him to struggle a little bit, but this was just an abomination. He was all over the map with his throws. And, I'm looking at his career numbers. He's 4 years in now. And I want to tell people right off the rip, stop looking at completion percentage when you judge quarterbacks or when you try to get a feel for how good a quarterback's been or how bad a quarterback's been. Unless the completion percentage is outrageously bad or outrageously good. Like if a quarterback was 25 of 27 or if he was 9 of 30, then okay, go ahead and use completion percentage as your barometer. But if you're a quarterback and you're not completing 60+%, and I mean mid to high 60s nowadays in the NFL, then you've got issues, I think. And or you need to compensate with other things such as yards per attempt and other stuff like that. But Baker Mayfield, I bring that up because I'm looking at his 4-year numbers. Last year when Baker Mayfield was good under Kevin Stefanski, 68.2% completions. This year when he's been bad under Kevin Stefanski, 62.4%. Yards per attempt is even better this year than it was last year, 7.4 over 7.3. But then, of course, you look at the TDs to picks. Last year, 26-8. This year, 15-11. 34 sacks as opposed to 26 all of last year. And I'm looking at numbers from 16 games in 2020 as opposed to just 13 this year. So he's still got two more to go. And most telling to me, as I said, total QBR last year, 65.5. Really respectable. And don't, with a 1 to 100, think that 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, 70 to 80 is a C. That's not how it works. You have to see how quarterbacks play over the course of a season. And right now, the good quarterbacks are in the 60s. But Baker Mayfield at 65.5 last year, 37.9 total QBR aggregate for 13 games this season. That is just putrid. That's bottom, I think bottom 6 or 7 in the league. You can't win with a quarterback who's playing that poorly. And Mayfield, he just continues to be a problem. No matter what his physical status is, no matter what, illness, what have you, he's just not throwing the ball well. And one of the things I've noticed, I'm far from a quarterback whisperer, but I've studied the position as best I can over the years. And I've charted games that Browns quarterbacks have played, including Mayfield's entire rookie season, when, for my money, he threw the ball better than he has at any point in his career to this point. His rookie season, his ball placement was really, really good, and it was better than anything he's done in his subsequent 3 seasons. Even last year. Last year he was good, but he didn't place the ball as well on a consistent basis as he did as a rookie. But I've tried to, study quarterbacks as best I can, and Mayfield, he sinks. He's already undersized, and then when he throws the ball, he sinks a little bit. He dips. So he exacerbates his lack of height issue by throwing the ball from such a low release point. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of his passes sail high, because he's underneath so many of them. You think about another undersized quarterback, Drew Brees. Brees was a pocket passer, but he played on his tippy toes. It seemed like he was constantly on his tippy toes, and he had a high release point. You almost never saw Drew Brees go sidearm or duck down or anything like that, or dip down as he was releasing. Mayfield constantly, spread base and goes low, doesn't stay tall, and I think that hurts him. And of course, he's injured, yes, but as we've always said, if you're healthy enough to play, then you get judged by your performance on the field. You just do. You can do that with almost any player in the NFL right now. Well, you know what? They had a bad game, but they're banged up. Yeah, they had a bad game, but they're coming off of a virus. They had a bad game, but this was wrong. That was. Find me a player who's played the majority of the season and is healthy right now, and I'll find you a player who hasn't done anything, who's been a decoy on offense or a ghost on defense. So everybody's banged up. Everybody, it seems, is ill. By the way, the NFL, you knew this was going to happen. They're going to power through this COVID outbreak, this Omicron, and the positive cases shooting up. They're going to power through it. They're too deep into this to pause. If you pause, you might not restart again until June. They're just going to go through it, and whoever constitutes the roster on a given game day, well, so be it. They're hoping to get to the playoffs. They've only got 2 more weeks to power through, and then once you eliminate a lot of teams, then you can do the old, what is it called? The bubble type stuff with the playoff teams, and really hunker down when it comes to trying to keep them healthy. But even that'll be difficult because it's so easy to catch COVID these days. But that's what the NFL is going to do. And I know that the players that you see on certain teams, including the Browns against the Raiders, for example, Nick Mullins at quarterback, you don't necessarily want to see that. But what were the Browns supposed to do? QBs 1 and 2 were out because of the COVID protocols. Other teams have had that issue. Look at what happened to the Ravens. When they were getting ready to play the Bengals, they lost Tyler Huntley after having lost Lamar Jackson to the ankle. Huntley went on the virus list. So they had to run Josh Johnson out there. And honestly, though, the Ravens' problem was not their offense. It was their defense. And while we're on that tangent, Joe Burrow throws for 525, fourth most passing yards in the history of the NFL. Just torches Wink Martindale's defense. And you sit there and you go, okay, the Bengals have Joe Burrow, number 1 overall last year. And the Browns have Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall in 2018. I mean, who would you rather have? Joe Burrow yesterday, 37 of 46 for 525, 4 TDs, no picks, 89.3 total QBR, 2-0 against the Ravens, 2-0 against the Steelers. Let me see what his total QBR is for the season. Yeah, this is what's interesting, though. And, I'll say this. Burrow's total QBR is not outrageously high by any means. 52.7 for the year, his second year. Last year was 48.5 in his injury-shortened rookie season. He played 10 games. This season, 15 games, 52.7 is his total QBR. Now, that doesn't square with Pro Football Focus's ratings of Burrow, which are very, very high. But if I'm going to be consistent about it, Burrow's total QBR hasn't been nearly as good as his numbers would suggest. 30 TDs, 14 picks, 4,100 yards passing. But the Bengals never in a million years would trade Joe Burrow for Baker Mayfield. You think about Josh Allen yesterday in New England, slinging the ball around, running the ball, fourth down magic with his feet, fourth down magic with his arm, zipping the ball into postage stamp windows, just carrying his team to victory at New England. Oh, that's right. Josh Allen was in the same draft as Baker Mayfield. Oh, okay. Lamar Jackson, same draft as Baker Mayfield, former MVP. And it just gets depressing. Now, the good news for Mayfield is that Sam Darnold was in the same draft as Bake, and Sam Darnold is terrible. So not every quarterback taken in 18 is a reference point. But even, you look at a quarterback taken in 2020 like Joe Burrow, and you go, why can't the Browns have Burrow? And if you look at the division, you look at the AFC North, who would you rather have if you had to win one game and all of the quarterbacks had the same roster available to them? And I know they have different skill sets. Jackson with his running is so much more exceptional than either Mayfield, Jackson, or Roethlisberger. But if they all had the same skills around them, same roster type, who would you want if you had to win a game? Mayfield has got to be listed fourth. He has to be. I mean, I would still take Lamar Jackson if, of course, healthy. I mean, they all have to be healthy. I'd take Jackson 1, Burrow 2, Roethlisberger 3, and Mayfield 4. But I don't know of many people who are going to say, yeah, I prefer Baker. You say, well, what about Roethlisberger? He's an old man. He's broken down. His Steelers got punked by the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Oh, well, I still like Ben Roethlisberger if I have to win one game, even if this might be his final season as a Steeler or his final season overall. Final season period, because he's been with the Steelers his entire career. But, some question about whether he would move on to play for another team. So at the very least, it might be the end for him as a Steeler. I still want him if I have to win one game. I like my chances with Roethlisberger better than I do with Mayfield. And I certainly like my chances better with Jackson and Burrow. And that's a shame. It's too bad. Could Baker Mayfield make everybody turn the Browns upside down in a 2-week period? Yeah, I suppose, but I doubt it. I don't think he's going into Pittsburgh and lighting the world on fire against that defense in that house with Roethlisberger, all that's going to be surrounding him and all the emotion in that building. We know the Steelers feed off emotion. I'm not betting on it, that's for sure. I mean, can't do it legally in Ohio, but I'm talking figuratively speaking. And maybe Baker carves the Bengals again, okay, but I don't see him doing it against the Steelers. So, very difficult year for the Bake Show. A difficult season for the Browns, and especially where Baker's concerned, because they didn't sign him to an extension, which looks like a wise move, sounds like a wise move, but now what do you do with him in the offseason? You're certainly not going to pay him big money after what he just did. I think they let him play out his 5th year. Because remember, this group inherited Baker. They didn't draft him, they inherited him. DePodesta and Barry and Stefanski. He wasn't their pick. It was John Dorsey's pick. So I think the Browns are not going to commit a lot of money to Baker, meaning they won't offer him an extension. And even if they did offer him a lower extension, Mayfield's ego is going to say, well, no, I'm not going to take it because I know I can be better and I'm going to prove it to everybody when I'm healthy in 2022, and then I'm going to get paid. So I don't think Mayfield gets paid either way going into next year, which means he plays out his 5th year in Cleveland, because I'm not holding my breath on Russell Wilson coming here or Aaron Rodgers coming here, however, whatever it takes, however the method. And I certainly don't want to see Deshaun Watson with all his legal troubles. Those are the 3 big names mentioned out there. So I think the Browns are stuck with Mayfield next year. They got to pray that he's healthy and much, 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 much better than he was this year. Otherwise, they're spinning their wheels again next year. All right, when we get back on the other side of the upcoming break, I will we'll talk about the blame pie where the Cleveland Browns 2021 season is concerned.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Hello, this is Don Mike Mendoza, the host of the Producing While Asian podcast. Join us to listen in on conversations with everyone who identify from producers to non-producers who all are part of the AAPI community. There's all that and more on the Producing While Asian podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network.
This is Mike Voorhees, co-host of the Swingin' a Tribe MLB podcast. If you love Cleveland Indians baseball, then this is the pod for you. We've got you covered each week as we talk about all the games, breaking news, trades, the roster, all things Tribe. You're going to love it. Go Tribe.
Welcome back to the Dennis Manoloff Show, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Jordan Powell is the producer for this show. I mentioned in the previous segment we were talking about the blame pie, but before we get there, I hate to admit this, I hate to acknowledge it, but the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at what's left and they're going, you know what? We got a chance to win the AFC North. All right? Because first of all, the Browns at this moment are in last place. The Steelers are in 3rd place. But the Steelers, they have the utmost confidence they can beat the Browns. I mean, they beat them in Cleveland. They can beat them anywhere, especially with Roethlisberger. So they're saying we're going to beat Cleveland. And then we got to go to Baltimore and beat the Ravens. Tough ask, no doubt. But, in their minds, one game for the whole for all the marbles, okay, we can win it. But if Pittsburgh wins its last two games, Pittsburgh is 9-7-1. If the Steelers win their last two games, the Ravens can finish no better than 9-8. So Pittsburgh wins by a half a game there. If Pittsburgh wins this last two games, the Browns can finish no better than 8-9. So the Browns are out. What the Steelers would need is the Browns to beat the Bengals on the final week of the year. And then the Bengals would drop to 9-8. And they also need the Chiefs to beat the Bengals. Chiefs and Browns would have to beat the Bengals for the Steelers to get in at 9-7-1. Where the rest of the division would finish, either 9-8 or worse. So the roadman and his Steelers can somehow, some way, by hook or by crook, get in. If they win out, they get some help from the Chiefs and the Browns. So it's not a long list of things that have to happen for the Steelers to get in. I hate to acknowledge that because unlike Roadman, I can't stand the Steelers. Well, I mentioned the blame pie, and who is to blame for the sorry state of the Cleveland Browns right now? The real mediocre to bad state of the Cleveland Browns. The absolute performing to way below expectation state of the Cleveland Browns. One of, if not the most disappointing team in the NFL, given all of the hype that accompanied the Browns entering the season. Where do you place the blame? I threw this out there to my producer on the radio side, one of them, Frank the Tank, and I gave him only 3 slices because I really wanted to focus on those 3. I said, if you only had 3 slices of pie, how would you divvy it up? What percentage of each, as far as blame goes? Kevin Stefanski, Baker Mayfield, defense. Frank did a good thing in my mind. He took that and he said, well, listen, I'm going to take the Stefanski piece and add everybody on the coaching staff and say coaching staff is 75% to blame for this year. And then 25% Baker. That's it. That's all Frank did. 2 pieces. A 75% piece to the coaching staff and a 25% piece to Baker. When I stick with the 3, I'll do an adjustment, though, per Frank's wishes to a degree. I will adjust it to say Stefanski and his coaches as 1 piece of the pie. The defense, just the defense, not Joe Woods, but the defense as 1 piece, and then Stefanski, or then Mayfield is the other. When I look at it that way, I go 30, 40. 30% coaching staff, 30%. No, you know what? Honestly, as I'm doing it right now in my head, I'm going to drop that down. The defense is not 30% to blame for this. I'll drop the defense down to 20% defense, 45% Mayfield, and 35% coaching staff. The coaching staff just hasn't been good enough. Kevin Stefanski, Joe Woods, Alex Van Pelt, Mike Prefer, way too many mistakes in all phases, undisciplined team, inability to figure out a way to win late. I know players play. Ultimately, it's up to the players to perform, but the coaching staff has not gotten the job done and has put this team in a bad position time and time and time again. The defense, yeah, it sprung some leaks, but overall, the defense has been on more occasions better than it has, good than bad. And Baker Mayfield deserves a big chunk because he just stunk. He just hasn't been good. So that's where I look at it with the blame pie right now with 3. But it is interesting how you do that and how you analyze it, and you add the other pieces and whatnot. Regardless, they're 7-8. I don't see it getting any better. It's very conceivable they finish 7-9. 7-10. In one sense, I kind of hope they do. The Browns fan in me, lifelong Browns fan in me, wants them to win the division. Yes, of course. But if they're not going to win the division, I want them to finish 7-10 because they need to have a reflection. They need to look in the mirror and go, what we're doing is not working. We've got to make changes. Not just tweaks, we got to make changes. And I don't think you can just sit there and go, well, all we need is Baker to be healthy and we'll be fine. No, it's more than that. Baker's a real big problem, but there's more than that. All right, thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate taking the time. And once again, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody.